Welcome to the Java class. Today in this video we will discuss the Java exception. We will learn about exceptions in Java. We will cover the errors, exceptions and different type of exception present in the Java. So first of all we will discuss the definition of the exception. Exception is unexpected event that occurs during the program execution. It affects the flow of program instructions which can cause the program terminate abnormally. Okay, it affects the flow of program and exception can occur for many reasons. Some of them are invalid user input. Suppose for example invalid user input means suppose we are expecting the data from the keyboard of type integer. If we enter the string type of data, then it will error. Okay, you will get the error. So this is invalid user input. Next is device failure. It may cause for the device failure. If you run the program, you will get some device failure. So this is device means some system errors. Next, if you run the program, you will sometimes system will get stuck. So this is called as device failure. Loss of network connection. Suppose you are getting the IP, you are writing the program that getting the IP address for a particular website. You need network. Okay. So suppose you lost the network connection, then you will get the error. So this kind of errors. Next is physical limitations. For example, out of disk memory. Suppose your system memory is less and you are putting the more data in the system, then you will get the error. Okay. Code errors means like syntactical error, semicolon. You suppose you missed the semicolon, opening brace, closing brace, typing missed. So this is called as the code errors. And opening an unavailable file. Opening an unavailable file means suppose you are in program, you are passing the file that is abc.txt, but that file is not available in your system, then you will get the opening file. You will get the error about the unavailable file. So these exception can occur for these reasons. Okay, so here the hierarchy, there is some hierarchy in the exceptions. Here is the exception hierarchy. Okay, so is first top class is parent class is here throwable. Inside the throwable is there is classes that is error and exception. Okay, again exception, there is two parts of two classes. That is runtime exception and IO exception. Runtime exception and IO exception. Okay, so as you can see from the top, from this content, the throwable class is the root class in hierarchy. Note that hierarchy is split into two branches. One is error and exception. Okay, exception class, again there is two which contains two subclasses. One is runtime exception and IO exception. Errors represents irrecoverable conditions such as Java virtual machine running out of memory, or memory leaks, or stack overflow errors, and library incompatibility, and erection and etc. So errors represent which is irrecoverable. Okay, irrecoverable conditions such as like Java virtual machine running out of memory means suppose Java background JVM is running out of memory leaks, stack overflow, and so on. So these are represented as irrecoverable conditions. Errors are usually beyond of control of the programmer, and we should not be trying to handle the errors. So actually these errors are out of control. We could not handle this kind of errors. Okay. Next is come to the point, the exception. Exception can be caught and handled by the programmer. We can say that program. Exception can be caught and handled by the program. When exception occurs within a method, it creates the object, and this object is called as exception. Exception object. I will repeat once again. When exception occurs within the method, it creates the object. This object is called as exception object. It contains the information about the exception, such as a name and description of exception and state of the program when exception occurred. Okay, it contains the information like name of the exception and description of the exception. Okay, so we will learn how to handle this exception in next video. In this tutorial, we will now focus on different types of exception in Java. Okay, so here exception types are types of exception. Types of exceptions. So first one is runtime exception. Okay. Next one is our exception. Okay, runtime exception and IO exception. So runtime exception happens due to the programming error. They are also known as the unchecked exception. It is also known as unchecked exception. Unchecked exception. Okay. Runtime exception happens due to the programming error. They are also known as unchecked exception. The exceptions are not checked at the compile time, but runtime. It will not check at that compile time, in runtime. Some of the common runtime exceptions are illegal argument exception, improper use of the API means illegal argument of exception. Null pointer access, missing run pointer access means missing the initialization of variable, means if you declare but there is no initialization of variable, then you will get null pointer access, null pointer exception. Okay, so when you will get the null pointer exception, suppose you declare the variable and missing initialization of variable, then you will get the null pointer exception. Next is array index out of bound. Array index out of bound means if your array size is 100, then you want to pass more than 200 or 300 values or more than 100, then you will get the exception, that is array bound exception. Here runtime exceptions are first one is illegal argument exception. Illegal argument exception. Next is null pointer exception. Okay, next is array index out of bound exception. Array index out of bound exception. Okay, next is arithmetic exception. So these are the exception types of runtime. First one is illegal argument exception. Suppose there is illegal argument, then you will get the illegal argument exception. Null pointer means exception means you declare variable, there is no initialization, then you will get the null pointer exception. Array index out of bound exception means suppose your array size is 5 and you are passing 6 elements, then you will get array index out of point exception. Arithmetic expression divided by a number by 0. If any number you want to divide by 0, then you will get the arithmetic exception. You can think about in this way that if it's runtime exception, then you are out. You can think about it in this way. If it is the runtime exception, then that's your false. Okay, null pointer would not be have occurred if we had checked whether variable is initialized or not. Where array index, suppose your array size is 5 and you want to pass the 6 elements, then you will get the error. Okay, next is that is second. First one is runtime exception and second one is IO exception. IO exception. Okay. Second one is IO exception. IO exception is also known as checked exception. They are checked by the compiler at the compile time, and program will be able to handle this exception. Okay, program will be able to handle this exception. It will check at the time of compile time. At the time of compile. Runtime, at the runtime, it will be handled at the runtime, or it will be checked on the at the time of runtime, and the IO exception is it's checked on compile time. They are checked by the compiler. Okay. Next is IO exception. The as known as checked exception, they are checked by the compiler at the compile time. Okay. Some examples of the checked expressions are IO exceptions are: first one is file not found exception. Here, trying to open the file that does not is on your system, then you will get the file not found exception. Okay, so these are the type of exception. First one is the runtime exception, and which is called as unchecked exception, and the second one is IO exception. The errors will be checked at the time of the runtime. The exception will be checked at the time of the runtime, called it runtime exception. Here, the example is illegal argument, null pointer exception, array index out of point exception, and arithmetic exception. Next, second one is IO exception, which it checked by the compiler at the time of the compile time. Example is file not found exception. So this is about the exception. Okay. So thank you for listening. Stay home, stay safe.